right. I am mentally ill.
Sorry. We're halfway through 2022, then is there a better time than this to talk about the best books of the previous year? I don't think so. Just a heads up, yes, I'm covered in bruises. No, these are not hickeys. These are just the latest pain treatment I'm trying out. Hopefully it works. Well, hello there, welcome back. Today, I'm here to gush about some great fucking books. I considered not making this video at all, considering how late to the party I was. Statement of the year there. But truth is, I just really want to talk about these books and recommend them to you, because Lord knows they deserve it. These are the best books that I read in 2021 in the order that I've read them. Just a friendly reminder too that these were not necessarily published in 2021, they were just books that I read in 2021. Okay, let's go. First, Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. So this is a tricky one to explain because it is a memoir, but it's also heavily infused with magical realism. I don't know if that would be considered autofiction. Maybe not, but it's definitely a memoir. It follows Echo's life up until her high school graduation / right before college, and it very much reads like a coming-of-age story, as weird as it sounds. Like, this is someone's real life, but it reads like a coming-of-age, if you know what I mean. The book has a very distinct voice and great use of language and metaphors. The writing is just amazing. Echo Brown is a very talented writer. It's got a fantastic cast of characters. Again, weird to call them characters considering this is a memoir. I think some of my calling them characters comes from studying film and specifically from studying documentary, because when we are talking academically about documentaries, we refer to the people in those documentaries as characters. Yeah, anyway. And it's got an amazing audiobook too, which is narrated by Echo Brown herself. Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, 5 out of 5 stars. It follows this boy whose brother was murdered by a rival gang member, and the protagonist has to avenge his brother's death. So he picks up a gun, gets into the elevator, and in there he has a series of kind of surreal encounters. Every single floor the elevator stops at, a person was directly or indirectly part of his past walks in, and every single one of them has stories to tell him about how they died. So this is a novel in verse about cycles of violence, and more specifically gun violence and gang violence. It talks about how difficult it is to break those cycles, and also why people get into them in the first place and why there seems to be no end to them. Because like, the protagonist was gonna kill the person who killed his brother, but that person only killed his brother because his brother killed someone who was important to them, and so on and so forth, going back generations, even before his father and his uncle. That was just so much activity with my hands, oh my god. No spoilers, but the ending here was just fantastic. It fit the story and the themes just so perfectly. It's unreal. I again listened to this on audio, which was also narrated by the author, and it's just fantastic. I just said fantastic. Fuck. Winterkeep by Kristen Cashore, 5 out of 5 stars. So this is the newest addition to the Graceling series, 9 years after the publication of what we assumed was the last book. Now this is another one that's tricky to explain because first of all it's the 4th book in a series, but also because each of the books in the series follows a different main character and takes place in a different part of this world. It's also a series that is remarkably character and theme driven rather than plot driven, so that adds to the difficulty, definitely. The first book, Graceling, takes place in the 7 realms, a place where some people are Gracelings. And a Graceling is someone who was born with 2 different colored eyes, and a grace, which is basically a special ability. Those graces range from borderline superpowers to incredibly useless things. So for example, the main character in the first book, Lady Katza, is graced with killing. But you also have a character who is graced with being able to open his mouth the length of his head. So there's that. And in the first book we follow Katza as she goes on a journey with a fellow Graceling prince to rescue someone. It's very hard not to be cryptic when talking about it. But also as she goes on a journey to reclaim her agency and to discover who she really is and just the limits of her independence and all that. And it's just fascinating and very progressive, you know, especially when you remember that it was published in 2009, I think. It's incredible. I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite series of all time. All of the books are incredibly feminist and explore quite heavy themes, you know, with a lot of complexity and nuance to them. And a couple of themes that are explored throughout the series are themes of abuse and of healing after abuse and of breaking generational cycles, you know, of understanding that you can be better than the people who came before you, which I love. Now, going back to Winterkeep, this is the first book in the series that follows multiple perspectives. It's got 5 POVs, 2 of whom were already some of my favorite characters in the series prior to this installment. One of them is Bitter Blue, who is the Queen of Monsi and the protagonist of the 3rd book in the series, which is my personal favorite.
What is even privacy?
She travels to the newly discovered / contacted nation of Winterkeep to investigate the disappearance of one of her friends, as well as the deaths of her political envoys. Her friend Gideon, who I mentioned before, is another one of my favorite characters in the series prior to this installment. He goes with her, and he is also another one of the POVs in the book. I love him so much. But Bitter Blue is kidnapped and everyone else thinks she's dead. We also follow Lovisa Cavenda, a new character who's a daughter of a couple of politicians from opposing parties, politicians of Winterkeep. She's studying to become a politician herself, and she's on a path to discovering who she really is and who she actually wants to be. And the other 2 POVs are a telepathic fox and a deep-sea creature with lots of eyes and tentacles. Like Kristen Gashaw's mind. It really explores themes of imperialism, environmentalism, just politics in general, really. It talks a lot about exploitation, you know, specifically in a political sphere, as well as how humans really see themselves as superior to other living creatures and to the planet in which they live in, really. It also talks a lot about breaking generational cycles and breaking away from ideologies that you just no longer agree with and just choosing your own path in life. But despite handling such heavy topics, it's actually quite a hopeful book, you know. I find that it balances the darkness and the light really well. But yeah, fantastic characters, fantastic interpersonal relationships, and just fantastic exploration of abuse. Beyond the Black Door by A.M. Strickland, 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is set in a world where every person is essentially made of 3 things: body, spirit, and soul. And the souls are manifested as houses in this place called the Sleeping Realm, which is kind of like an alternate dimension. And there are people who are soul walkers. They have the ability to go to the Sleeping Realm and enter people's soul houses to basically look for anything: answers, secrets, memories, etc. Our main character Kamai is an unlicensed / undocumented soul walker, and so is her mother, who teaches her about it. But everywhere she goes in the Sleeping Realm, this black door follows her, and it seems almost alive. Her mom never tells her what the door is, or who it belongs to, where it leads to. She only tells her that she's supposed to never, under any circumstances, open it. But the door calls to her, and when tragedy strikes, Kamai opens it and changes her life forever. I really loved the world building in this, the concept and the execution of the Sleeping Realm and soul walking, which is fantastic and very well written, but also the history of this kingdom, especially its religion and its gods, and how the court and all the groups within it work. It's got a fantastic cast of characters, and the main character is asexual and demi-biromantic, and that is actually a very important and integral part to the story, which was amazing. I really like the sex worker rep too. Kamai's mother is a sex worker, and I actually liked how it was portrayed in this book. And I won't give away any specifics, but the relationship between Kamai and the character she finds beyond the black door is just amazing, incredibly complex, and super interesting. The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackworth, 4.5 out of 5 stars. There's a library in hell with all of the books ever conceived in the minds of authors, but that were never actually written. And every now and then, characters from inside those books will escape them and try to get out of the library and find the authors. And it's the task of the head librarian to stop that from happening, get the character back, and put them back inside a book. This is the first book in a trilogy. I haven't read the other ones yet, but I really love this first one. And in it we follow Claire, the aforementioned head librarian, as she goes on this mission to rescue a fugitive character and put him back into his book. The other main characters in this book are Brevity, who's a muse, and Claire's assistant, Leto, who's a minor demon who's gonna help Claire in her mission, and Romeo, an angel who's after Claire because he thinks she has a specific magical book. And Hero, of course, he is the character I mentioned earlier who escaped his book. He doesn't have a POV, but he is part of the main gang, and I love him, so I have to mention him. Oh wait, I am gonna try to fix this lighting issue real quick. Does this work?
No.
Okay. Claire, one of our main characters, is a pansexual woman in her 40s, which is just something that you don't really see often, and something that I really loved about this book. The library in and of itself feels like a character, and so do the books in it. They feel very much alive, which is something that I always find fascinating. I love the world building, the magic system, all the different creatures that we have in it. Basically, I love the lore in general. And I also really loved how in this book there were many different afterlives, because of all the different beliefs that exist in the world. And basically, the beliefs and the believers are what kind of makes these afterlives exist, which is just an amazing idea. The writing is also quite witty and kind of quirky, and I really liked it. This book feels almost like one of those games where you have to complete a lot of quests. The characters go to many different places, do many different things between A and B, instead of going straight from A to B. Does that make sense? It's more about the journey than the destination, basically. At its core, it's about the power of books and stories and words, and how they have a life of their own. Stories are mutable and ever-changing, and they mean very different things to different people at different places and at different times. Sometimes a book that you loved as a child means something completely different if you reread it as an adult, so that's kind of what it means. Know My Name by Chanel Miller, 5 out of 5 stars. This is Chanel's memoir about her sexual assault. The trauma, the trial, the whole investigation process, and how invasive and re-traumatizing the whole process can be. But it's also about the good people she found along the way. It's a surprisingly hopeful book given the subject matter. There's not really much I can say about this one, I think. Miller is a powerhouse of a writer. Her prose is beautiful, extremely engaging, and it evokes such emotion that I sobbed. It was very cathartic for me. Again, the audiobook was awesome and was also narrated by the author. We have kind of a recurring theme here. This is without a doubt the best memoir I've ever read, the best non-fiction book in general I've ever read. Perhaps one of the best books, period, that I've ever read. So high praise. Am I gonna have to change the fucking camera again? I could have gone with this frame from the beginning. This is the best one, I think. We Through the Stars by House of Eisen, 5 stars. this is the conclusion of the Sands of Harawiyah duology, and it's a beautiful one, I thought. Since this is the second and last book, I can't really talk about the plot of this one, but the first book in the duology is called We Hand the Flame. It takes place in Harawiyah, a fictional world where magic no longer exists, and it is surrounded by this kind of cursed forest called Yars. One of our main characters, Zafira, is the only person who can get inside the Yars without losing her mind. She comes from this very misogynistic state that's also a quite poor state, so she disguises herself as a man to go inside the Yars every single day and hunt to feed her people. Our other main character is Nazir, who's the son of the Sultan and also his best assassin. Nazir basically does his father's dirty work, but he was also abused his entire life and made to believe that he's a monster and that he could never ever be anything other than a monster. The two of them, along with three other characters, are sent on a mission to retrieve this book that can basically bring magic back into this world. But there's actually a catch, because Nazir is sent to follow Zafira in order to find the book and then kill her. If you know me, you know that I absolutely adore any ship that starts with one of the characters having to kill the others. So, like, was there any way that I would dislike this book? Maybe, but like, highly improbable. We Hunt the Flame was one of my favorite books of 2020, and I was highly anticipating with Reader Stars. It was released in January of 2021, if I'm not mistaken, and I bought it immediately, but I was so scared of not liking the book or the book not living up to my expectations, and I was also scared that, you know, the book and the series would be done and I would just not have these characters anymore. That I only got to the book in June of 2021, and it took me the entire month to read it. And again, it only took so long because I just didn't want the book to be over. So yeah, I'm really happy to report that it was amazing. First of all, the prose, absolutely gorgeous. It's flowery and lush and beautiful, but not to the point where it takes you away from the story. Quite the contrary, actually, because the prose in this just lends itself to the setting. It's like Hafsa herself said, the earliest form of poetry dates back to Arabia, and the earliest form of Arabic literature was Arabic poetry. There is a reason why this book is written the way it is. It's not purple prose for the sake of it. That being said, it is fucking stunning. I will read Hafsa Faisal's grocery list, honestly. Second of all, and the highlight of this duology for me, the characters. I loved these characters so much that when I finished reading this, I cried because I wanted to keep reading about them forever. I will read them about doing nothing of importance, like just going about their lives and being domestic and doing their groceries. All of them are incredibly complex and well written, and I love and feel for every single one of them, but my favorite has to be Nazir. He fits one of my favorite tropes ever, which is the character who was raised to be a weapon slowly realizes they're human and have feelings too. He was abused and brainwashed as a kid, turned into a monster by his own father, and just left thinking that it was too late for him to be anything else, you know, that this, a monster, was all he was ever gonna be. And in this book we really see how much he's grown and how much he continues to grow, the ways he finds to repent, the way he discovers his feelings and slowly allows himself to start actually feeling them. Also, he is the world's biggest simp, which just gives me life. He'll be brooding in a corner pretending he doesn't feel anything in 1 second, and the very next just start crying Norse of Yada's beauty and ability and personality the moment she steps into the room. I love him, oh my god. I already loved the romance in the first book, but this was everything. Everything. Nazir and Zafira's relationship is so soft and tender, while at the same time it's tumultuous enough to keep you at the edge of your seat, just kind of screaming for them to just kiss already. The loyalty, the love, Rachel, the fierce devotion that they have for the other, while at the same time accepting and respecting the other's decisions even when they wish they were different. In fact, all of the relationships in the series, romantic or otherwise, are exquisite. All of them are so beautiful and complex and just completely unique and different from one another. If you love found family, this is the book for you. The world building expanded even more in this conclusion, and it remains very interesting and very solid. It even deconstructs some things that the characters thought they knew about the world and its history before, which I just found fascinating. I love this book with all my heart and soul, and I will till the day I die. The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia, 5 stars. This novel of manners takes place in Levraine, a vaguely French fictional country. More specifically, it takes place in Loisy, the preferred sport of the titular Beautiful Ones, who are basically the rich high society people. Our main character, Nina Beaulieu, is rich, but she was raised in the countryside and therefore has very different ideas of the world. For example, she wants to marry someone she loves? The shock. The horror. Also, she has telekinetic abilities. That's a thing too. She goes to Loisy during the grand season to make her debut into society and to be courted in the hopes of finding someone she loves and wants to get married to. But Nina, poor Nina, my sweet, sweet Nina, she's not much of a high society girl, despite being a noble herself. She's very clumsy, she doesn't know when to talk and when to stay silent, or what the right and proper things to say are. This from the perspective of the Beautiful Ones, because in my mind, she can do no wrong. And Nina doesn't have full control of her powers too, which just makes her the target of a lot of very malicious gossip. Telekinesis isn't seen kindly by the society in general, but especially not in women. Oh, and Nina is staying with her very well-connected cousin Gaëtan and his snake of a wife, Valérie. Enter Hector Rovray, famous telekinetic who just arrived in town looking for the love of his life. It happens to be Valérie. Nina, however, is just besotted with him, his talent, his traveling the world performing, his personality. So Hector takes this opportunity to start courting Nina in an attempt to get closer to Valérie, but slowly starts falling for Nina instead. This book really has the vibes of the Pride and Prejudice movie with Keira Knightley, except make it French. The prose is stunning, as always, because apparently Silvia Moreno Garcia never misses, and it is just so soft, so soft. The characters here are just incredible. We mainly follow 3 POVs, which are Nina, our protagonist, Hector, our love interest, and Valérie, our antagonist. Nina is a very kind and gentle soul, and she is very romantic and idealistic. She's also, in my opinion, extremely ADHD and possibly even autistic, which, you know, I really relate to. Her growth throughout the story was just absolutely beautiful to read, and I really loved how her growing and maturing didn't make her become any less kind of a person. And Hector, oh Hector, I just love him so much. Life was just never really kind to Hector, who, unlike Nina, was not from money and was therefore really marginalized for his telekinesis. He spent years and years making his name as a performer and garnering fame and money in the hopes of getting Valérie back. So, you know, he's hopeless romantic too, but in a very different way from Nina. And Valérie, who, mind you, I really fucking hate, was also extremely well written. Even though you don't like her and don't agree with her choices and actions, you're still able to understand why she does the things she does. She ends up being almost a foil to Nina. And she resents Nina very much for being able to choose love, for not having to align herself 100% with society's expectations, and for not having to give in to the pressure put onto women. The romance between Nina and Hector was just this beautiful, soft thing that was always at the risk of being broken for many different reasons, but that ended up blossoming into this very loving and beautiful relationship. I love these two idiots so fucking much, I don't even have the words to express it. The way Hector sees Nina's potential and actually helps her to learn how to use her powers and to control them. And the way that Nina shows Hector that he's worthy of being loved, you know, he's worthy of love just the way that he is, you know, for who he is. Lord Almighty, I just can't. All of the characters, even the secondary ones, were fully fleshed out. And the way that this book is just so hopeful and soft, it's just a kind and loving book, as weird as that sounds. You know, I love reading about rage and anger and all that jazz, but like, even I need some respite every now and then. So I listened to this on audio while reading along with my physical copy, which was a gift from my friend Sel. Thank you so much, Sel. And the audiobook is narrated by Imani Jade Powers. She did an amazing job. I felt that her tone matched the story and the vibes perfectly. It was just such a soothing listening experience. I can't recommend it more. I bet you didn't even notice this was being filmed on a different day. I just happened to have the best luck in the world because the original files for the rest of this video got corrupted. It's fine. It's gonna be fine. So no glam today. I can't be bothered, but I'm still gonna talk about these damn books because I'll be damned if I don't. So next in line, we have The Air You Breathe by Francis Pontes Peebles, which I also gave 5 out of 5 stars. So there's this line on the back of this book, you know, the little synopsis there, that I feel perfectly describes it. The story of an intense female friendship fueled by affection, envy and pride, and each woman's fear that she would be nothing without the other. Bitch. We follow this intense, kind of codependent, bordering on toxic female friendship between Maria das Graças and Maria das Dores, or Graça and Dor for short. What happened with my accent there? I don't know. I feel like most queer people, or maybe this is more of a queer woman experience, I don't know, have had at one point or another a friendship that was very intense and that was constantly kind of bordering on queerness, and I don't know if I can make that make sense, but like, from what I hear, it's a very common experience, and you know, from my own lived experience. What a jumbled mess. And this book just kind of captures that feeling and that experience so fucking well, and it's done in such an interesting way. Our main character Doris is an orphan, and she's the daughter of a formerly enslaved woman. And at the start of the story, she is working at the kitchen of a sugar plantation in northeast Brazil in the 1930s, if I'm not mistaken. And it is there, at 9 years old, that she meets Graça. Graça is the daughter of the new owners of the place, of the entire plantation, and the two of them start this friendship. They develop this friendship over their shared mischief and their love of music, which eventually culminates in them running away together to try a career in music in Rio de Janeiro's Lapa neighborhood. We follow these two women and their friendship over many, many years and through many, many locations and different situations. And the book does not shy away from showing the ugliest parts of each character and their relationships with each other, which was just fascinating and just amazing to read. Shit got messy so many times, and I love mess. We've got messy characters, messy relationships, messy, intense, codependent, kinda toxic, very queer friendships. Amazing. It's just amazing. And we also end up following many different moments in Brazilian history and culture. And another perfect quote from the synopsis. One has a voice like a songbird. The other feels melodies in a song and composes lyrics to match. Music will become the shared passion, the source of the partnership and the rivalry. And for each, the only way out of the life to which each was born. But only one of the two is destined to be a star. Their intimate, volatile bond will determine each of their fortunes and haunt their memories. Another thing that I really fucking loved was that right before each chapter begins, we have like little excerpts of the music that Graça and Doris make together. Like we have excerpts of the lyrics, and it's always just so fucking good and so beautiful, and I really wish I could listen to this music. I love the descriptions of the music in and of itself, and the rhythms, and you know, the culture of the time and the place. I love this book so much. I listened to this on audio, and it was narrated by Rebecca Mozo, who is a Brazilian American narrator, if I'm not mistaken. And I really loved her narration. I thought her voice and her cadence and all that always matched the story and the vibe, the tone that it was going for. And I highly recommend you listen to it too. Her pronunciation of Brazilian words wasn't always 100% correct, but I personally am willing to overlook that because, again, I just think she did an amazing job. And obviously, I highly recommend this book, and I really wish more people read it and talked about it on BookTube because it's so fucking fantastic. I loved it. Next, Hunger Pangs, True Love Bites by Joy D'Amore, 4.5 out of 5 stars. So this is the first book in a romance fantasy series that will eventually turn polyamorous, which I didn't know when I first picked it up. I thought it was a standalone novel, and I was just very confused that it took so much time for the three characters that will make up the triad to finally meet one another. But it's only the first book in a series, which I'm very excited about. We mainly follow two characters, Nathan and Vlad. Nathan is a werewolf. He's the son of the Wolf Lord, and he's returning from war after getting injured in battle. He was shot with a silver-tipped bullet, and like silver and werewolves just don't go together well. So he's got a very injured shoulder that doesn't heal properly. He lost his hearing on one of his ears, and he also has chronic pain from this whole situation. But by far the worst part of it is that he's unable to shift anymore, so he can't turn into a wolf with all the other werewolves during the full moon. My cadence is just very weird because of the cluttering. I hate it. So he's grieving all of these losses while at the same time trying to adapt to his new life back in Low Haven, as well as like the unrealistic expectations that his family has both for his recovery and for his future in general. To get away from all that, he takes a position as captain of the guard in Nighty, which is a vampire island that's full of supernatural people. And then we have Vlad, who, from the name, you've probably gathered already that he's a vampire, but he's also the Viscount of Heidi. He's very concerned with the people's well-being and quality of life, and he's always advocating for them in Parliament. But the other politicians don't seem all that interested in making changes, including his father, the actual Count of Heidi, who he's working under. But he was able to make some advancements. He made public hospitals and public education, as well as unions and union spaces. So an all-around great guy overall. He's also very clearly ADHD, in my opinion, and I don't think that was like an accidental thing or just me reading too much into the situation, because if I'm not mistaken, Joy D'Amore does have ADHD, so like the probability is high, okay? He's got chronic migraines, his eyes are quite sensitive to light, he's quite anxious, and he's also very insecure. Like, all vampires have some type of ability, you know, power, and his power, the only ability that he has, is to move through the shadows. So it's kind of like teleportation, but only through the shadows. I don't know if I am making this make any sense. Hopefully I am. But yeah, he teleports through the shadows. But the thing is, since he is very anxious and he doesn't really want to be perceived, oftentimes he does that accidentally, like he flicks, goes to a shadow, goes back to where he was in the middle of like talking to someone. It's quite a nice and inventive way to kind of portray in a more visual way his anxiety, and I really fucking liked it. I thought it was very well incorporated into the story and the character work. So yeah, the two of them meet, they are instantly attracted to each other, but like they don't really act on it at first. And before anything romantic happens, the two of them build this very beautiful friendship and care for one another. And then that develops into a relationship, a romance. I thought the progression of their relationship was just so amazing and so beautifully done, and it was really good to see the progress every step of the way. I love those two idiots so fucking much. And interspersed with all that, we have Ursula, who's a very mysterious woman on a journey to heal ancient magic trees from an unexplained evil. Inexplicable, not unexplained. It is explained in the book. The world building and the characters are fantastic. The writing is very good. It's quite witty. I really love it. And the romance is the most adorable thing. So we've got disabled characters written by a disabled author, an amazing romance, awesome world and characters, and the start of a future polyamorous relationship. What more could you want? It's a very gentle story, surprisingly so, and it's, you know, about finding spaces where you belong, and yeah, I love it. It's also got two editions. One is Flat with Fangs, which is the one with the pink cover and the one I own. This edition has explicit smart, and then we have Fluff with Fangs, which is the one with the blue cover, where all of the sex scenes are fade to black, so there's no explicitness, which is just quite nice, isn't it, to have a choice on whether or not you want to read something explicit. And I really like that the Fluff with Fangs, the blue cover, it isn't that there is no sex in the story, it's just that the sex scenes are fade to black, sorry. Then we have the one and only Iron Widow by Sidan Deidar. 5 out of 5 stars again. This takes place in Huaxia, which is a country that's under constant attack from these monsters called Windwinds. And in order to fight them, the humans created the chrysalises, which are giant robots, mecha, that are powered and piloted by 2 people, 1 male, 1 female. The male pilots usually become stars, while the female pilots, who are called concubine pilots, usually die after the first battles due to the mental strain. We follow Wu Zetian, an 18-year-old village girl who decides to become a concubine pilot in order to avenge her sister's death. She wants to kill the pilot who murdered her sister, but she ends up getting her revenge in a unexpected way. Let's put it that way. She is then paired up with Li Shimin, the strongest and most controversial pilot who used to be a prisoner for murdering his own family. She is paired up with him in the hopes that he will be able to tame her mental strength. In other words, subdue her inside the chrysalis so that she cannot control a man. The two of them, along with Ija, Zetian's friend and the guy she loves, try to leverage their power to survive every attempt on their lives, and there are many of those. When I first heard about this book, the only thing that I knew was a tweet by the author that said something along the lines of, in my book, there is a polyamorous triad and they literally pilot a mecha with the power of their polyamory. Yes, please. So that alone convinced me to at least give it a try. And it was my most anticipated release of the last year. And I absolutely loved it. All of the characters are fantastic, they're very complex and well written. I especially love Zetian and Shimin. And the 3 of them, Shimin, Zetian and Ija, are fantastic characters in their own right, but their relationships are so well written. Both their relationship as a triad, but also each of their relationships with one another. I don't know if... Wait... Like Shimin's relationship with Zetian, Shimin's relationship with Ija, and Zetian's relationship with Ija. Like the 3 relationships alone are also fantastic. We also have a disabled representation and a representation also of suicidal ideation that I personally found very on point and like very well done. We also have great commentary about misogyny and like the start of some commentary on the gender binary in general, which is also another thing. If you, from listening to the synopsis, are worried about this book being too binary in regards to gender, I would say there's no need for that. First of all, because Zetian herself spends the majority of the book deconstructing her ideas about gender in general. There's talk about that in literally the first scene in the book, with some visual representation and symbolism. And that is something that's explored a bit more throughout the whole thing. And I think that the seeds were planted for it to be even more explored in the sequel, which is very exciting too. But also the whole pilot system is intentionally binary, in my opinion, because the society in Huaxia is very binary, so they impose that on the people, like they impose those ideas. And there is also commentary on that in the book. I love the world building in this, and I also really love the bits of actual Chinese history and culture that were incorporated into it. We have like feet binding, for example, and Wu Zetian herself is kind of like a reimagining of the real Wu Zetian, who was the only female emperor of China. Obviously, it's not like a one-to-one thing. This is not ancient China. This is not China period. It's Huaxia. But like there are things that were very clearly taken from the real world, and I thought they were very well incorporated into the story and made for like a fascinating world building. There are just so many layers and commentary and complexity to this book. I really want to do a kind of analysis, deep dive, word vomiting video about it, like dedicated entirely to it. I don't know if I'm gonna do it, but I would really want to. And obviously the selling point, polyamory, and YA no less, so pick it up. Honeytrap by Asta Glenn Gray. 5 out of 5 stars. This book was tailor-made for me. It's tailor-made. One of my favorite tropes, if not my favorite, is enemy spies in love. And that came from something that eventually evolved into more of a guilty pleasure of mine, which is those movies where you have like an American soldier and a Russian soldier and the two of them fall in love, shenanigans ensue. I know it's usually US-American propaganda, and it relies on some terrible and reductive stereotypes about Eastern Europe and communism and whatnot. I can't choose what I like. And I am completely obsessed with The Men from U.N.C.L.E., more specifically the 2015 movie, which has a bit of this trope, kinda, yeah. Some would argue that it doesn't, but like, they're wrong. I am obsessed with the movie and I am obsessed with this trope, and when I read the synopsis of this book, I was like, this sounds a bit like The Men from U.N.C.L.E. Not the story necessarily, but the vibes, the characters, the relationship. And also after reading the book, the author's note at the end says that it was inspired by The Men from U.N.C.L.E. So tailor-made for me. Again, I don't know how many times I have to reiterate that. At the height of the Cold War, a Soviet president traveled to the US, but in this book, someone shot at the train he was in, and the authorities stifled any news of this occurring from the general public while they investigated it. Since both the Soviets and the Americans wanted to do the investigations, an agreement was made for both a Soviet agent and an American agent to work together to partner up temporarily and get to the bottom of this. Gennady, I'm so sorry, I'm probably butchering his name, but Gennady, the Soviet agent, is very excited by the prospect of traveling through the US, and he's also thrilled to work with his new partner. The catch is that his boss wants him to honeytrap the American agent. And Daniel, the aforementioned American agent, is delighted to meet an agent from the mysterious Soviet Union. And he's also determined not to repeat his mistake of falling in love with a partner, but since this is a romance, the two of them slowly but surely fall in love. The book spans 15 years and is divided into 3 parts, 3 moments in time when Daniel and Gennady meet. And it was surprisingly one of the most beautiful, angsty, soft and tender love stories I've ever read. I love the two of them so fucking much, both as individual characters and as a pairing, and the build-up of their relationship was just flawless. You really get to see them getting to know one another, becoming friends, and then falling in love every step of the way. And even though, as I said before, I usually love the stories about Russian spies and American spies falling in love and blah blah blah, I'll be the first to acknowledge that they usually lack new ones. It's always US good, Russia bad, and some Eastern European stereotypes as a cherry on top. So I was actually surprised by how nuanced and well researched this book was. Obviously I'm not a specialist, okay, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, but at least it seemed that way to me. So there's that. Both characters are so complex and have such rich backstories and histories of their own, and it's just so tender. The relationship is very tender. There's also an open marriage at a point in the story too, which I absolutely loved. I honestly and personally adored the way it was written and portrayed. I feel like I'm not selling this book properly, but like, trust me, it is so fucking good. It is definitely on my top 3 of the year. I highly recommend it. So go pick it up and please tell me what you thought of it. I am very curious, very interested, and if you end up loving it like I did, please talk to me about it because it's so lonely in here. It's available on Kindle Unlimited in Brazil. I'm not sure if that's the case for other countries, but you know, maybe give it a look. Anyway, and last but definitely not least, A Dowry of Blood by Esther Gibson, 5 out of 5 stars. This is a reimagining of Dracula's brides, told in second person by the first of them, Constanta, to Dracula, so almost like a letter that she is writing to him. Constanta was a peasant girl who was left for dead when her village was raided. She had a family, she had a life, she had another name. Dracula found her as she was dying and offered her a way out, which she took. So he turned her into a vampire, named her Constanta, helped her get revenge on the raiders, and made her his wife, which is quite a progression. The problem is that he isolated her from the outside world and any other people completely, and made her entirely dependent on him. We see the whole thing through Constanta's eyes, how she was thankful to him for saving her life, how she grew to love him, and how he used all that to put her in this position where she's always concerned about appeasing him, and she's constantly looking for his approval. The whole thing builds up very slowly, and when she realizes what's going on, she's already too caught up on it, she's already into deep, you know. In other words, this is an exploration of abuse and its insidiousness and how it feels to be stuck in it. But it's also about rediscovering yourself and finding the strength to get out of it, about reclaiming your agency and your power, and it's beautiful. And the prose of this book is gorgeous. It's just exquisite. It's some of the most beautiful prose I've ever read. Also, it's polyamory again. I'm so sorry. I'm really not though. But yeah, we have the other bride and groom of Dracula and their relationship with Constanta, and it's very beautiful. I really love it. I really love the conclusion that there is no love without freedom. Read it. It was so fascinating to see how these 3 different people reacted to the abuse in completely different ways and found different ways to cope with it. Like, those are 3 completely distinct characters and they are fantastic. And that's it. Those are my favorite books of 2021. Finally, hopefully this comes out before the end of 2022. Please tell me in the comments down below whether or not you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, or whether you want to pick them up now, you know, if they sound interesting to you. Please let me know. I am very curious. I just really want everyone to read all of these books because they are all fantastic in very different ways, granted, but like, they are all great books and some of them are not talked about nearly enough, so please read them. I am begging you at this point. Okay, I got better light here, so this is where I'm gonna sign off. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, comment and subscribe if you feel like it, and as always, I'll see you around.